group of people who came together to collaborate, to give, I feel, a lot of their life and a lot of their feeling and a lot of their emotions into this story. So I want to ask everyone who's worked on the film, and there's a big group, to come up to the stage so we can all celebrate this together.
As they're coming up, I just want to mention that we do not have any mics out in the audience, so if you raise your hand, I will call on you. Try to speak as loudly as you can. I can pass this mic around to anybody who comes up.
Producer Lucas Joaquin. Zach Booth, starred shot the film, cinematographer, costume designer, Andy Williams, production designer, Peter Pratt, associate producer, Laura, who's art department, assistant, my editor, Fonzie, actor, my co-writer, Mauricio, background extras extraordinaire, Jason, executive producer, executive producer, Lee, Adam, our website, Maria Disco, Julia, my brother,
Is there anyone left in the audience? Okay, so I'm sure you all have questions for Ira or anyone up here, so please raise your hands and we'll get this going. Anyone?
Hello.
Okay. Right here.
How do you start making a movie?
How did I start making a movie? Well, I lived a certain experience that I guess about 4 or 5 years ago I ended a relationship, and it was a 10-year-long relationship, and pretty much on the day that it was over I knew that there was a beginning and that there was an end and that there was a story in between, and that somehow that story was not one I had seen often in cinema. I mean, yes, we've seen love stories, but not one that had the specificity of this particular world and this particular set of issues and these particular characters. And as a gay man, I also see very little cinema that looks like my life, but also the world that I live in New York. I don't see that world, and I wanted to make a film that looked like the world I lived in. So I started writing from really from emails and journals and letters and something very personal, and then I put it away for a couple of years. And then I luckily found Mauricio Zacharias, who said, you know, there's a story here, and it should be told, and we should do this together. So we wrote a script. We finished it in January, and then we just sort of said we're going to make this film this summer. And we did get a real extraordinary support from people who wanted to see this kind of cinema being made, and we shot this summer and we made a film. I mean, I'd made films before, so once we had the money and we had the script, and then I got these amazing group of actors, that's another story. Then we shot a film that we hoped would be honest, and this is what you see.
Speaking of that other story, I wanted to ask about it. How did you find these actors? Because they're just wonderful.
Yeah, well, by the way, Tor Linhart, who was the wonderful star of the film, is shooting it with Neil Jordan in Ireland. So he is not here in America, but he's here with us, and he's here on the screen, and he will be with us in Berlin, which is where we go in a couple of weeks. I was lucky enough to meet Zach in New York based on an audition tape that he sent me, and there was a level of intimacy and honesty that I saw in his performance and immediacy with the character. This is a very difficult character to play because it could be considered the villain in the piece, and to me it was never the villain. It was a person who was struggling with issues of addiction and issues of relationships, and I found that Zach was able to bring the heart to something, to a guy who does things that are really painful to people around him.
Very nice. Yeah, I agree with Ira. The challenge with this role is just finding the way to make Paul lovable, you know, in all these circumstances. And it was a great adventure for all of us, and from the moment I met Ira, I was just touched by his humility and his energy and his passion for what he was trying to do in the story that he was trying to tell, and his willingness to let go of it once he got all of us there in front of the camera. And I think that speaks a lot to the kind of filmmaker that he is. So I'm just really grateful to be here.
Thank you. I will say both these roles in America were not easy to cast. There's something about sex and cinema and homosexuality in cinema that means that there's a certain kind of fear, and I would say sex as much as homosexuality. I'd say the body, the human body, and how it's depicted. So it wasn't easy to find an actor, and I've to play the role of Eric. So there's a different thing going on in Europe and in other countries about how sex can be played in cinema. Tor Lindhart was recommended to me by a screenwriter friend in Denmark. He said he's the bravest and the best actor in Denmark. I said, okay, that sounds good. He auditioned on tape in a hotel room in Spain while he was on another film. He sent me the audition and we cast him immediately. What I felt really lucky about with Tor is it's a part about a man, he's a Dane. It's a man who's trying to make a decision. That's the whole film. Let's say that. And Tor brings a sort of active energy to that place, that question. And I think that's what actually makes the film, to me, it makes the film, if you think it works, it's because of that energy he brings to it that somehow keeps you wondering what is he going to do and how is he going to do it. So I felt very lucky. And then these guys, we shot the first sex scene in the film we shot on day 2, which was a good idea, let me tell you, because we threw it all in the air. The sex was great, and the sex was free, and the group of us who were making the film, we all felt very, very comfortable with each other. So then we could go on and do everything else following, and that was a good plan if you ever think about it.
Cool. Any questions out there? Sure, this gentleman right front.
2 questions, Ira.
You're right here. I'm going to hand you the mic so everybody can hear you.
2 questions, Ira. One is about Arthur Russell and the emotionality of the soundtrack. And the other is, this year we've seen Weekend and Pariah, which came out of Sundance, Pariah. But that people said that queer cinema and gay and lesbian cinema was over. Mm-hmm. And then you make this kind of beautiful film. So could you talk a little bit about what we're seeing now amongst people like yourselves making cinema and Arthur?
Yeah. The first question was about Arthur Russell. All the music in the film, or at least all the score in the film, is by a musician named Arthur Russell, who lived in New York and died in New York in '92. He died of AIDS. He was a genius, and most of his work was unknown at the time of his death. I discovered Arthur's work through a great film called Wild Combination, made by Matt Wolf, which is a documentary about Arthur's life. And to tell you, my next film is actually about Arthur. It's a fiction film about Arthur and his relationship with his partner, Tom Lee. And it's a beautiful love story. And I'm excited to make that, but that's another thing. Arthur's music, I made a film that was here 2 years ago called Last Address. And it was about a group of artists who died in New York of AIDS. And I discovered the heart of Arthur's music, listening to it while I was making that film. And we just we started to use it in different little things we were making, and it suddenly came to me that he was a New Yorker, and he was an artist, and that his music had the emotionality, and the complexity, and the humor, and the lack of sentimentality that I wanted in this film. So we decided to sort of use his film similarly. To me, it was sort of the way that Simon & Garfunkel is used in a film like The Graduate, or in Magnolia. Like, he was going to be another central character in the film. So we created a score out of the treasure of his archive. Queer cinema.
Weekend Pariah.
Weekend Pariah, queer cinema. Where is it now? Where is it going? It's interesting because I really made this film as a gay man, but I made this film about an experience that I lived and knew. And in my life, luckily, because I live in New York, my identity as a gay man is really not the primal way in which I need to identify myself. It's part of my experience. It is part of my story. It is very much so. And I think what I would say about this film is it's really a film about the secrets that gay people have kept because of the history of homophobia on some level. What that legacy is. You know, I came out at 16, and that was in the late 70s. But that doesn't mean I came out. I started another set of secrets, and that's really what this relationship is about, is secrets and secrets and secrets and secrets. And so, thus the title, which is Keep the Lights On. My hope is that this film is the kind of film that encourages people to keep the lights on, because it's a lot better. That's what I would say.
Anyone else? Okay then, well, thank you. Oh, great, sure. Yeah, here.
Oh, no, it's okay, I'll speak up.
Okay.
Great. Yeah, it was interesting to hear you say that, because I think that's definitely an American thing. Because growing up in Australia and England, it's definitely not like that over there. But my question is actually, are all the staff here getting paid?
All what staff?
Everybody here, or everybody working here? Are
well,
they
not
getting
today.
paid, or are you waiting for
Oh,
someone
no,
to
no,
make
no.
the film?
We made the film as a group of people. We raised money to make the film, and I would say 90% of the people here got paid. 90% is pretty good. But I also want to say, I don't, I feel that, I'm not sure I agree with you that it's different in Australia. Just because, whether it be about sexuality, or in this case about issues of addiction, or about the things that people keep between themselves in relationships, I think that there's a propulsion to kind of hide bits of ourselves. And I'm not sure I would agree that that's something we're all done with, even in Australia.
Well, you have common law. You have common law marriage as well.
Yeah. Well, I got married 2 weeks ago, so yeah. My husband is here. He's also the painter, the person who painted the opening credits. So Boris Doris. We don't talk about that. Yeah.
Okay, did I miss any hands, or? Oh yeah, okay, this gentleman back here.
Ira, you made this before. Shane came into the marketplace, but do you see it as any kind of companion piece, cousin?
Well, about 2 years ago, the script was called Shame, interestingly enough. And we actually moved on from Shame before that, because it felt like it wasn't enough, really. The film was about a lot of things, but it is definitely a film about shame. So I feel very connected to that question. And how shame sort of filters through relationships, and also how you can learn to move beyond shame. That's really what it's about.
This lady back there.
How do you fake smoking crack?
We had the best props person. Mari was amazing, and she also did. I thought she did a really great job with the computers and the cell phones. I mean, that's it in terms of conveying. This is an emotional history. It's not a period piece. It's an emotional history. But it's nice to have these little details that I think actually convey difference. It's sugar, little bits of sugar, and then tobacco underneath, if you want to do that.
Okay, Don, final question right here.
The relationship between his best female friend, which there's always a best female friend in gay movies, it seems, but this one was a different quality of relationship. And can you talk a little bit about that?
So the question was about the best female friend, and that's a character in gay cinema, but that somehow this was different. And I think I would say it's not really a subcultural film in that way, that there's not a marginality to the gay people, and there's also not a marginality to the female character, I hope. I tried to, luckily I have a lot of great models and friendships in my life that are the most central in my life, so I tried to sort of call upon those details and to create a character. And then Julianne was just amazing. Do you want to say anything about your role in the film and any worries about
can you hear me?
No.
Just when I read the film, I just recognized this story, even though they weren't the particulars of my experience. It just reminded me of people that I've known and friendships that I've had, and it's not been about gay or straight or man or woman, but people that you have a connection with, especially, you know, in the 90s in New York when you're young and you're trying to figure it all out. And I also fell in love with Tor. Like on day one, we met and started filming, and I'm sorry, he's not here to bask in people watching his incredible performance, because he's just a lovely guy, and it was very nice just do scenes with him.
I mean, just one last thing about this question of queer cinema. I think, you know, this is one way in which things have changed, is that I think that, like, our world my world as a gay man looks more like this than maybe a different kind of gay cinema 20 years ago, which looked differently because the communities were maybe differently. And I think many of us know that we no longer, luckily, in a lot of the cities we live in, and I'm sure not everyone, and I don't know where everyone lives, but a lot of the places in America, it's beginning to sort of to dissipate the distances between people. And I think this film is sort of about these cultures and these worlds that we live in that look, I hope, more like this.
Okay, that's it, folks. Thank you all for coming out.